Welcome to Woman on It Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hack delivered will be by our guest Annie Gaudreault. Topic Perimenopause and you reclaim your energy and well being. Episode 153 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo, and empathy is critical when you're dealing with perimenopause and reclaiming your energy and well being at any stage of your life. First, I would like to mention things that's been happening in the world of technology and women on it hack the future. Congratulations to the AWS country manager Sofia Guidotti for winning the Global Leadership Award at the recent Women in Tech Global LATAM Awards. Cheers to our former PhD guest, Deborah Osborne, and her co writer, Tom Rawlings, on the release of their new book, Protecting Other People's Children. We are excited to see it making an impact. Grab a copy now on Amazon. And finally, hooray for Cindy Watson, another PhD previous guest. Her book has been featured in Times Square. Wishing you continued success and hoping your book hits the New York Times bestseller list. Best of luck, Cindy. Now let's go back to our topic. Perimenopause and you reclaim your energy and well being. Feeling like your midlife health is a roller coaster you weren't expecting? It's time to take control and navigate the journey of perimenopause with confidence. Annie Godot is a wellness expert and endurance athlete. Found her friends struggling with perimenopause symptoms and a lack of accessible information. Driven by her passion for women's health, she's here to guide you through this transformative phase. In this interview, we'll discover the realities of perimenopause, bridging the information gap, how to learn to navigate the often confusing world of midlife health, and the power of holistic approach. Finally, practical strategies for a thriving midlife. Gain actionable tips and tools to transform your journey. Annie, where in the world are you joining us from today?
Well, I'm joining you from Toronto, Canada.
Fantastic. Welcome to TCI. We are joining from Grand Turk, a small country, small island in the Mediterranean. However, the problem of menopause well-being is a global problem. Women face symptoms of menopause and midlife health issues on a daily basis. So, Annie, you've described perimenopause as a transformative phase. Can you unpack that for us? What are some of the key changes women can expect, both physically and emotionally? And why is it so important that we understand them?
Ooh, big question. And I'm so glad that you're asking that because perimenopause is a phase of life on itself. First of all, we are not educated about this phase of life. So often we arrive here and having no idea of what to expect. In fact, when women come into my practice, what I experience most of the time is them saying, "But Annie, I'm too young for this. I never thought that this could happen to me this young, if you want." So let's talk a little bit about what to expect and what we can do about it. Number one, perimenopause is the phase where estrogen levels are fluctuating and slowly decreasing, leading us to the final point of menopause. That phase can last up to 7 to 10 years. That's right, 7 to 10 years. So if you think about the average woman, I know in North America, average woman will go through menopause 51 to 52 years old. You could be, technically speaking, in perimenopause in your late 30s. Absolutely not a surprise. Now, what I want women to know is that this is not just a reproductive and sex hormone that decreases and that no longer allows us to, bear children. The fluctuation and eventual slow decrease of estrogen has a total impact on women's bodies because we have what we call estrogen receptors, little places all throughout the body that receives and benefits the wonderful work that estrogen does on our body. I like to call menopause a full contact sport because it will impact every single part of your body, mental health and physical health. So this is one of the biggest on realized symptom of menopause is that it can act on so many levels. We are not just experiencing irregular periods every month. We are now can be experiencing a range of symptoms. Now, this is where it gets really interesting is that we have recognized by the Menopause Society over 34 symptoms. That's right, 34 symptoms that are associated with perimenopause. So this is why it gets very confusing. It also explains why it is so difficult when we are in our doctor's office to get answers because it seems on the surface so unrelated to perimenopause. But what I am talking about here are, for example, depression, anxiety, right? Heart palpitations, something called frozen shoulder. You could also be experiencing acid reflux now, joint pain, right? In addition to the classic symptoms, hot flashes and night sweats, brain fog, moodiness, right? So, and these are only a few, of course. So you can see why it is such a confusing journey for women. The good news is that there are a lot of things that we can do as women to navigate this stage wherever it lasts, right? For some women, it will be short, for some women, longer. And I
Mm.
think it's really important to also share that every single woman is going to experience this journey differently. So, what worked for my friend, my sister, my neighbor, my colleague might not work for me because my symptoms will be very different from them. And that has to do with a lot of factors and a lot of them that we honestly don't know from a scientific standpoint. Like we should tell our listeners that menopause research is so behind. So half of the population are females. We are all going to go through menopause. It is not a disease, it is a journey. Just like puberty was a normal stage of life, this is another one, significant one for women. But we'll talk next about what are the things that we can do to support ourselves through perimenopause.
Before we do that, though, Annie, I wanted to ask you because, judging by what's going on, for example, online platforms, there is so much discussion about cancer awareness, and people are open to even talk about colon, cancer, and they post things about their breast cancer and so on. Why is there so little content? Or so little awareness around perimenopause or menopause, because after all everybody like half of the population is going to be affected by it.
Yes, it comes from an old stigma that we have from menopause. It used to be shrouded in shame. And, if you think about it, every single natural phenomenon that happens to women, technically speaking, not that long ago, were not talked about. We didn't talk about periods. Right? We didn't talk about periods openly. Now it's a lot more open. But this is, again, a natural phenomenon. It's still in many cultures of the world. We don't talk about this, right? We don't advertise the products that support women, right? It's all hush with vague words and veiled concepts, right? That's not helping women. Pregnancy, we did not used to put pregnant women, you know, in advertising, in movies, right? It was like we were a little bit more back of the house. My mother um, uh, was photographed in a wedding when she was pregnant with me. And she's at the back, the furthest back. The only thing that you see is a little bit of her head. And she said, I was not going to be just seen like this. And that was cultural, right?
Mhm.
Menopause is the same thing. There is this like, we used to call it the change, right? And most conversations were hushed. People would just whisper, right? There was a little bit of reluctance to talk about this. I see this in my practice all the time where women say, my mother did not want to talk about that. She would just say, yep, yep, everything's fine. I never had any issues. So we unfortunately inherit this background. First, second of all, we live in a very misogynist healthcare system for the most part. That's why we are so behind in having the research for women exclusively on women's bodies. Even not that long ago, what we saw is that drugs were not even tested using women because they thought our hormones made things too complicated. So drug companies would only invest with male patients to test their drugs. We are not small men. We are different than men. So that explains a little bit why you're not seeing the open conversations. Now, I will say that I am extremely optimistic because in the last year alone, and I've been at this for a while, but over the last little while, we have seen much progress in terms of conversations about perimenopause, menopause, more education coming out. So I'm very optimistic.
Well, but I think it is an important conversation to have because it's not just our body that is affected, it's also our brains that gets affected, especially given the fact that we want to see more women in leadership positions, and that is the critical age that we can make up that step up the ladder. And that's really what may drag us down because before we came to life, I was just sharing my story of my mother, who, as we know, 50 years ago, we didn't have any literature in communist Poland about menopause, let alone, about how to deal with it. And I really was upset because I did not understand what is happening with my mom. We used to have a lot of laughter, and she was very snappy, very, all over the place. And it was very difficult time to go through puberty, to deal with mother who was not understanding, who didn't have empathy, and because all she was affected by was this huge swathe of her hormones and hormonal change. So I'm glad that we can talk about it openly. As you mentioned, a period was not the topic, let alone lack of period was not the topic of conversation. So how can women actually enjoy an open conversation, because so many women feel lost and alone when they start experiencing these changes, and they may feel like they are the only ones going through it. What
Mhm.
are some of the biggest misconceptions? Let's do a myth buster here moment with you, Annie.
Yeah, I love these myth busters. The first one is one that I touched on earlier, when we opened up the conversation, which is I'm too young for this, right? That's a myth. We are not too young. And we have to be careful with the notion of average, because averages have a big catch-all, right? Of here to here. So really important to understand that we are not too young for this. The second one is how it is not just a physical experience, it's a mental, emotional, and physical experience that women will have. The third myth is it's one size fits all. And I think that that's a big one. That menopause is supposed to be this one thing, and that we're all going to be experiencing this thing the same way. And it could not be further from the truth. So what can women do? What can we do? And this is where I'm excited, because the younger generations are a lot more open about having these kinds of conversations. But what I invite women to do all the time is to simply start talking about it, with our friends, right? In our communities, in the networks that we are part of. Because as soon as somebody starts to talk about this, it's like the floodgates open. And then other women chime in and go, oh my God, me too. I have been feeling fatigued. I have had hot flashes. I thought I was the only one having these brain moments. So this is the first thing that we have to do, is we need to start A, talking about it, and B, asking questions. Asking questions from our healthcare providers. And honestly, many of them are not educated. That's the other tragedy of this conversation, is that most doctors, on average, 50% of them in a recent survey about menopause, said that they felt unequipped to support women at menopause. Why? Not because they're not smart, but because they lack the education. Right? They received no formal curriculum about menopause. Even OBGYNs, right, who are supposed to be technically the experts in women's health. I mean, that's another tragedy. And that could be a whole conversation on its own, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But demanding answers is essential.
Demanding answers is essential, and we are demanding answers. What is going to change? However, we've got a great community and it never changes here. I'm telling you, they are always supporting us. Olga Vasina says, great to see you back, Beata. Thank you so much, Olga. And Patrick, IPOV, in Patrick's opinion, launched his support, a terrific explanation of perimenopause. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, emoji heart from Patrick. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. And here is another story. Well, my husband is always supporting me, and Patrick, who just commented, is always putting me on the pedestal. No, your body is not changing. Although I know that it is changing. The skin is not going to be as glowing as it used to, and I notice these small changes. However, Annie, for the sake of understanding, when is that 7 to 10 years period of perimenopause? You mentioned it could even start as soon as 35 years old. However, what are the symptoms that we should be on the lookout and start researching or looking for advice on what to do to mitigate the changes and make that transformation as seamless as possible?
So the first advice is to start paying attention. And sometimes it's simply as simple as noticing the changes that are happening in your body that are not connected to anything else that is going on in your life. For example, I was talking about anxiety, depression, fatigue. If there are no other reasons in your life, everything is the same, your family life, your work situation, your relationship, you haven't changed job, etc., and suddenly you're feeling so depleted, right? Or you're starting to have all kinds of anxiety, but there is no reason for that. There's not more stress than before. It's the regular life, challenges. Start and write what you are experiencing in a journal. Start documenting what you are experiencing, right? And some of the symptoms are easy to recognize. Some will be a little bit, more nuanced, but start tracking that, because this is wonderful information and critical information when you go see your health provider, right? That's really important. Or somebody like me who coaches women through menopause, so that we have a really clear understanding of your symptoms. When these symptoms arise and you say there is no justification for this, everything else is status quo, that's when women should definitely be on the lookout for, maybe this is perimenopause here. Right? And as we said, because it can last up to 7 to 10 years before the end of perimenopause, and I should clarify, the end of perimenopause follows 12 months of consecutive missed periods, no more cycles for 12 consecutive months. That is when perimenopause is officially over and that we are in menopause. So recognizing the signs at first is really important, because each of these symptoms can be addressed holistically, either individually or as a group of symptoms. And we can talk about what women can do, because the good news is there is a lot that we can do, right?
Let's go for it.
Yay. And the first thing I want to talk about, people think because I'm a nutritionist, they'll be like, oh, she's going to talk about food. But the first thing I always talk about, the first asset in our toolbox is actually our own mindset. Right? So to examine what are our beliefs and values associated with menopause, because the incredible thing is that we've been able to, through science and research and experiment, to determine that the more positive our mindset is about this transition of life, the easier our journey is going to be. And I love that, because it speaks to the power of the mind over the body. So that's the first thing, right? Really examining our beliefs around that. The second thing is that what we used to do in our 20s and our 30s is no longer going to be serving us. So to be open-minded about changing some of our habits. And now we'll get more specific into that. But from a lifestyle standpoint, there are what I call 3 big boulders of menopause. And this applies in perimenopause. First, nutrition. Second, movement. And third, rest and rejuvenation. So do you want to get into each of these?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think everybody can envisage that because, the easy path that is pushed by many pharmaceutical companies is, you need this hormone and that hormone replacement, and maybe this serotonin inducing pill, and maybe another pill. Whereas there are some ways that you can definitely recommend looking into that may be a slow effect, a time consuming. However, it is more sustainable. So let's talk about that, Annie.
Yes. We don't have to sit in the back seat of the car, right? We can get into the driver's seat of this health journey and really get a good handle on it. And everyone's journey is going to be unique. But here are key things that we know that we need to do now differently as our bodies are changing. From a nutritional standpoint, more protein. That's the first thing that we need to do. We need to be upping our protein to, 20, 25 grams per meal minimum, depending on your level of activity. The higher your level of activity, the higher your protein levels need to be. And one of the reasons for this is that we need more energy, but we don't want to be getting into massive loads of carbs, because the complex carbohydrates, if you want, who give us lots of energy, Unfortunately, we don't metabolize the same way that we used to. So a lot of women feel that they're fatigued and so on, because with depleting level of estrogen, unfortunately, our bodies, the insulin that is required for the glucose to enter our cells is not as efficient. We become what people call more insulin resistant. And that is a problematic because without good energy, right, we get the fatigue, we're not getting all the nutrients that we need. So it's really important to up the protein so that we get that great energy all day long without the big fluctuations, the big highs and then the big lows. Number two, we need to increase our fiber. Fiber comes from the plant world exclusively. That means more vegetables because we need the vitamins, we need the minerals, and we're also really keen on fiber. And here we're talking about 25 grams per day. And most people have about half of that. We live in a, in a society of convenience. In the
Mm.
lot of convenience foods, there are no more fiber. It's been all stripped. So really important to up the fiber because the fiber nourishes the gut. And great gut health is critical for all life, but even more at this stage of life because great gut health supports um, your immune system, believe it or not. It also supports your making of hormones that are directly affecting your brain health, such as serotonin, dopamine, GABA, incredible hormones that makes us feel good. And as I said at the beginning, perimenopause brings a lot of threats to women's brains because we have a lot of estrogen receptors in the brain. So we need these hormones to be produced so that we continue feeling good, right? With serotonin and so forth. So great gut health supports our menopause journey tremendously. Right?
Mm.
So those are key things from a nutritional standpoint that we must take a look at. The third thing is that women don't like to hear, but it's less alcohol because we are so much more now going to be suffering from the effects of alcohol. Our liver is not as efficient. It's never been as strong to detox as men's livers. This is just genetics. So more alcohol is going to be really problematic for us and really affecting us. We also know alcohol is, cancer inducing. So we want to stay away from these risk factors. So staying away from alcohol will also help from a nutritional standpoint. So protein, higher fiber, and minimizing the alcohol content.
Amen to that, sister. Well, definitely, I have to tell you that I had a big revelation moment when I came to conclusion that all of a sudden this migraine is either related to alcohol intake, but most of all to the lifestyle that I was leading, which was stressful. It wasn't focusing on my well being. I didn't have me time that much. And especially last year when I was dealing with my mom's poor health, and I had to deal on it on my own. Back in a foreign country, foreign to me nowadays, because my husband was in our home, whereas I had to look after my mom. And that definitely was really stressful. I could feel the strain. So I'm wondering whether perimenopause could be also jump started by the external factors like more stress, and it could be the reason for perimenopause starting sooner.
It would not be the cause of starting sooner. However, what we do know, it would take a really, really massive stress event. So in general, these types of stresses will not cause. However, What we do know is that the stronger our health through perimenopause, the better we are going to be navigating it. Of course, that makes sense for any kind of disease as well, right? The healthier you are in terms of baseline, whatever life throws at you in terms of events, trauma, accidents, illness, etc., you're going to navigate a lot, smoother for sure. But it also means that when we are under big stress, like taking care of a loved one, the sandwich generation, as we call it, right? Taking care of kids on one hand, and then also aging parents, adds so much more pressure on women that will intensify potentially some of the symptoms that you will be experiencing. This is why the third boulder of menopause and perimenopause is rest and rejuvenation.
Mm. Well, as I like to call it, it is the life work, not life work balance, but really like work integration moment. So let's integrate some questions into the mix. And the great guy who told me once when I was advising him, drink your water with reverence. That's my husband. Answer was. I would prefer to drink it with you. So he said, he's asking now his question. Fascinating, Annie. So, are there any good ways a husband, a partner, can open the conversation to help a partner concerning perimenopause or menopause, whether they have symptoms or no?
Oh, I love this question. When I give talks to groups about menopause, and the group is mixed, men and women, I speak about having these conversations, right? This is so important. So, Patrick, loving this question. This is about approaching a subject, as all subjects that we maybe feel are a little bit more sensitive, is approaching it with openness and curiosity. So often I will say to my clients who, or partners of my clients, I'll say, just be curious and say, interesting. I've been wondering about your health. And of course, I've been hearing about the menopause conversation out there. And I wonder if this is something that you think about, right? We don't tell the person, I've seen you being bitchy, I've seen you being impatient, and I wonder if you've got menopause, right? That is not the right approach. But what we want to invite is the conversation of, I wonder in the context of your health, right? And your age, and you seem to be, relatively speaking, in that area where this is experienced. Have you thought that you could be affected by this trend? You could be going through this transition yourself. That's usually a great opener, because often the person will say, "Wow, I never thought about that," or, as a matter of fact, I've been thinking about it. I've been wanting to do some research about it. I've been wanting to talk to my healthcare provider, right? And then to invite the conversation further about, well, let me know how I can help you. Like, how can I support you through this transition? I love this question, Patrick. Thank you.
Isn't it so thoughtful? And he added a hashtag asking for a friend. There you go. Now, we've got another question from Mary, and this is a very interesting statement. Being a woman is like juggling flaming torches while riding a unicycle. Tricky, but totally worth it. Absolutely. We should embrace our feminine power because, after all, aren't we just animals of this kingdom? Because we are born to bring children, and somehow, with current, medicine and the advancement, we are living well past menopause, and have to make sense of this life and juggle along and really be prepared for anything that life throws at us. Now, next question. Jane is asking, what would be the effects to the women on perimenopause to those who are experiencing PCOS as well in their life? So PCOS is polycystic ovary syndrome, and that's quite a very difficult syndrome to deal with. Maybe Annie, you could brief us into this answer.
Yes, we often refer to this as PCOS, and it is definitely a very unique situation that requires more focus on the diet than, the oversimplistic approach that I talked about with the protein and the fiber. We want to be supporting women's hormones very carefully here. We want to be so those who are experiencing PCOS will potentially have more severe effects of perimenopause. Right? This is unfortunately could be because we're already dealing with a certain situation that is hormonally driven, and on top of that, we overlayer the wildly fluctuating estrogen and progesterone levels of hormones. So this is going to all of the symptoms could be more accurately experienced, Jane. So when I talked about keeping track of the symptoms, in this case, I would highly recommend, like mandatory, to keep track of these systems, and then to seek proper support from a menopause educated health practitioner who can support you through this transition. Great question.
Fantastic question. Thank you so much, Jane, and thank you everybody else for tuning in. We are halfway through our discussion, so let's talk about practical strategies. Um, can you give us some strategies of how to manage symptoms and like hot flashes and mood swings and ultimately feel more vibrant during this time?
Yes. So remember the three boulders we talked about: nutrition and two of the big strategies for women for all of the symptoms that will help will definitely be more movement. So this is really important. And I often in my practice, what I see is women saying, oh, but my God, Annie, and I'm so busy. This is a time where we need to make movement and exercise non-negotiable because of the incredible impact on total health that movement will have for you. Now, there is good news. It doesn't have to be long cardio anymore, right? As a former endurance athlete, I used to love these long cardio sessions, but they no longer serve me at this time of life. So what I encourage women to do is to be more focused with their movement, emphasizing two types. One, strength training, which will help with metabolism. It will help fighting muscle and bone fragility. So really important. It's also supporting weight loss for those who are experiencing the visceral fat accumulation right in the middle. And shorter, intense training. So not the long cardio, nice and short, 20 to 30 minutes, but working at a much higher intensity. That's going to be excellent in terms of not triggering too much cortisol, which is the stress hormone. It's going to be excellent for maintaining a good body weight. And because it is short, it's also much more manageable for our busy lives. Now, don't forget the third boulder of rest and rejuvenation. So becoming also non-negotiable is sleep. First of all, sleep, so important. And I know that some of you will say, but Annie, I have night sweats, right? The hot flashes in the middle of the night, and that becomes a problem. So activity is going to help with that. There are also some adaptogens that will help with that. But before I get to that, I want to mention around rest and rejuvenation that it's not just about getting some sleep. One of the most effective thing that we know as well for hot flashes beyond hormonal therapy, something that you can do is actually cognitive behavior therapy. It's been known to help women with severe hot flashes and night sweats. We
Hmm.
also know that no alcohol, less sugar, less inflammation will also help with these types of symptoms. You know, in North America, I'm not sure about the statistics in Europe, but hot flashes and night sweats are one of the most common symptoms that women experience.
Mm. So tell us about the cognitive behavior therapy. What is it, and how can we find specialists in this area?
Yes, so social workers, therapists are usually trained in, cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, and it literally they help you, give you the tools so that you can actually control the mind. Right, there is a relationship between the mind and the body, the brain over what happens. So cognitive behavior therapy is trains the body to to rewire to be able to manage these symptoms a lot more effectively. It is absolutely fabulous. I've done the training myself, highly recommend it for a lot of people that are in the workforce. These things are also paid by sometimes the employer.
Mhm. All right. I love your emphasis on a holistic approach to well being. Can you explain how the physical, mental, and emotional aspects of health intertwine during perimenopause? And how can women nurture all three aspects? Because there are so many elements, but maybe you have a secret sauce here.
Well, I'm not sure I have a secret sauce, but what I do know is that because the symptoms are so multifactorial, that we need to support ourselves doing absolutely a little bit of everything, right? Uh, Good nutrition, movement, being really disciplined about our rest, our sleep, even simple things like breath work every day. It doesn't have to become an hour meditation, but just a little bit of breath work every day to relax and to calm the body. These strategies, while they seem simple, they're very effective. Now, I'll talk about something that a lot of the times, gets overlooked at this time of life. And one of the things that I teach in my practice is that this is a great time for women to what I call prune the tree of our lives, because we are in a time of transition. This means that it's an invitation for change and to let go of habits or things that are no longer serving us. Remember, if you want to make a tree stronger, you have to cut branches so that the roots grow stronger. This is a time for us to grow our roots very deeply and long into the earth. So I often invite my clients, and I would invite your community to think about their lives and to review what is no longer what has been serving me but is no longer serving me anymore. And we do this with respect and we do it with love. But just like I was saying, I was a cardio addict with my marathoning and triathlons, etc. But that was no longer serving me. I needed to be open to a change and be open to what could serve my body better now. This is such a valuable exercise for everyone to do. And I'm not saying that it is easy, because we are attached to our things. We are attached to our ways. We're attached to our habits. But it's a wonderful exercise to do.
Absolutely. Every one of us needs to show how much we care for each other and, in the process, care for ourselves, as Princess Diana said. And what better way to look after ourselves than just listen to the stillness? And that's actually my change of habit, Annie. I have to admit to that recently I started doing intentional meditation because I am hopeful that it will really refocus my brain, and I can navigate my brain a better way, because at the moment it is really a full circus. What I mean by that is really I can see how my brain is controlling my thought process rather than the other way around. So I definitely would recommend a cognitive behavior therapy, uh, or at least looking into how we can go back to the basics, how we can uh, appreciate the small little things, the little positivities, or whether it is gratitude therapy, whether it is uh, connecting to, I don't know, old love flames or friends. And this is another one that I wanted to talk about because I think there is a power that really benefits women a lot. There is some studies that show that women get much more therapeutic outcomes from having conversation. And you mentioned that women have these groups and they really benefit from them. And I remember the story of Oprah talking about the fact that she loves, when she goes to a new country or new hotel, she loves her hour of spa treatment. But then she thought, it would be so much more fun if I invited my friends. And
Yes.
she discovered a new calling from the word, which is I had much more fun when I had this spa moment with my friends. So the power of positivity enhanced by sharing it with our friends is definitely another thing to consider. However, I'm mindful we are less than 15 minutes to the end of the show. So, Annie, let's go to some of the things you talk about the book you would recommend for people to read, and for anybody who would like to learn some words of wisdom from Annie.
Oh my goodness. Well, I will full disclosure, I'm a total nerd. And there are many books that I love. One that I wished I had read earlier, I think you had it on your screen there, is Mindset by Carol Dweck, and the incredible power again of, it's not the smartest person that is accomplishing things. It's just qualities associated with her behavior, like grit and persistence. And I wish I had known that very much earlier in my life. For women that are looking to have answers on menopause or make their menopause journey easier, I recommend The New Menopause by Dr. Mary Claire Haver, Haver. It's a recent book. It's a really good book about um, all of the symptoms explained and some of the strategies. Now, she is a board certified doctor. What is missing from that book is sometimes a little bit more the holistic approaches, but she still talks an enormous amount of time about what we need to do, um, in terms of self care. So that at least is a big component of that. But that's an excellent resource for women to get answers. Also, and this is what I see most of the time, is to do your own research so that when you show up at your physician's office, you're like, hey, look, it's here, right? I have the knowledge. And now, could you please support me with X, Y, or Z? Because there's many other topics, of course, today that we did not get a chance to address, because we would need 2 or 3 more hours.
Oh, absolutely. And we've got some more things to cover, like, for example, Eleanor Roosevelt's quotation, which talks about women are like tea bags. We never know our true strength until we are put in hot water. And definitely, menopause, perimenopause is like being in hot water. So, how are you brewing, Anna?
Well, I would say I am 56 now as a postmenopausal woman. I've made a lot of changes in my life in menopause, and that has significantly helped me mentally, physically. So I've changed how I eat. I have changed how I exercise, as I've mentioned before. I've also made changes in my circles, who surrounds me. I'm a lot less tolerant for things that are no longer fitting with my values. This is a wonderful time um, to really examine, what our values are, because one of the things that we need to know, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, is that women on average, after natural menopause, we have 33 years left to live on average. That's 3 decades, right? That's almost 40% of our lives that we are now going to spend at, at this stage of life, right? As postmenopausal. This is an invitation for transformation and for new beginnings. And one of the most beautiful books on the subject is called The Upgrade by Dr. Luann Brizandine, an American doctor who just writes about midlife and aging women. Beautiful, beautiful book. Highly recommended as well. But this is what I see in my practice is this can become the best time of our lives, right? Because we have a beautiful horizon of life with incredible experience, more self knowledge, more confidence. It's like we can do massive things, have great impact at this time of life, have incredible joy and happiness, if we decide to approach it that way.
Absolutely. Well, since you mentioned the people in your circle, we would like to mention Elizabeth Naumowski, our previous guest, who talked about conquer fear, unleash courage, and become a badass leader. And she recommended Annie today, and we definitely enjoyed our conversation with Annie. So, Annie, Jane is also commenting, thank you for the advice, Annie. And Patrick is really a great supporter as well. Mary has been commenting as well, and Olga Vassino left a comment. So we have this community that is supporting us. Is there any recommendation for daughters who would like to support their mothers? You mentioned partners. What about daughters? Can they support their mothers, their grandmothers, if the case might be? Is there any suggestion you would make to them?
Yes, I think that often what we experience is that we go through this alone, right? You talked about the circus in your head, right? The monkey and all that. So, our loved ones, and I love that with daughters, is that this is a great time for daughters to support mothers with what can I do to support you in your self care, right? Perhaps it would be really good for us to go and have a beautiful walk in nature. One of the things that I recommend for women when we start to feel that anxiety, when we start to feel that overwhelm, right? This is how, daughters can support us by taking us on that journey with them and get the benefits together, right? Or promote some beautiful quality time together where we get to talk, where we get to share. This is such a beautiful time so that we don't feel isolated and we don't feel like, honestly, like we're losing our mind.
Mm. Absolutely. Well, since we are talking about beautiful things and things we can do to improve our lives, I was wondering what Annie's improvement of life would be if she could invite any person in the world to have a private breakfast anywhere in the world. Who would you invite and where would you go to?
Well, I love nature. So the person that I would invite must love nature as well. And for me, it would actually be Dr. Andrew Well. And Dr. Well is one of the founder of functional medicine. So really looking at the root cause of health and embracing the holistic aspect of health, that everything is connected emotionally, mentally, and physically. So he is an incredible resource. He's a well of information. So I would love to go on a beautiful hike with him through the mountains and talk all things health and wellness and get his wisdom and benefit. I have read some of his books, but I know that it would be incredibly beautiful and transformative to spend that time with him to get deeper in how we can optimize our health naturally. And I know that he lives this abundantly himself. So I know it would be a fantastic time.
And speaking of wisdom, what is your life lesson quote and how does it appeal to you? Why does it appeal?
Yes, so it has to do with our reason for being, right? So that our life mission is to find out why we are here, right? So what is our mission, our gifts, and that once we know this, that our duty is actually to serve others with those gifts, right? And I have not done justice perfectly to the quote. This is how I remember it. But having been somebody who came late to understand what my mission was in this world and what my how do you call that, my vocation, I'm so deeply now committed to serving women at this stage of life so that they are empowered and guide them in a beautiful way. So, yes, thank you for putting the quote properly here. I think that Pablo Picasso was full of wisdom.
Hmm. Full of wisdom, but quite misogynist. But I'm not going to spoil this beautiful moment, Annie. Let's focus on positives. And if you could give our listeners one bold challenge or a piece of actionable advice to help them make their career fulfilled, or as you called it, purposeful, what it would be?
In the context of their career, you mean, or the context of their
Yes, in the context of their life fulfillment.
life fulfillment? Ooh, I love it. I love it. I would say that to be courageous, to take that first step, to go in a direction that they have been hesitant, but that they've been wanting, with that little voice that tells you, oh, this would be great. And you're a little bit hesitant. I would say, absolutely take that first step. Like, you don't have to take all the steps, but take the first step,
Mm.
because that will create beautiful momentum in your life. And that will give you wings to go forward with the following steps so that you follow your vocation and your reason for being here.
Annie, namaste. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and experience with us today. Your work is not only transforming the lives of many women and men as well, and also paving the way for more sustainable future. And that's it from episode 153 of PhD Livestream. Thanks to our guest Annie Gaudreault. To stay updated and ensure you never miss another positivity hack delivered, click on notification, follow Woman on it, and be alerted once a new video has been released. Next week, we are meeting with Nina Ma, and we're gonna talk about the power of neurodiversity in tech, why different brains matter. Thank you so much to our lovely audience who participated and asked questions. As always, our positivity quote comes from positive thinking only and goes look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little farther. If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. As Maya Angelou said, today is your day to hug the future, hug the positivity you want. Thank you.